There we go. There we go. Good day, good day, good day. I'm here with my co-host Dusty Bates, and this is Talking Commercial. We talk
Welcome.
everything about commercial real estate. You guys hear me okay?
I can hear
Dusty, can
you
you hear
on
me?
my end. Yes,
All
sir.
right. Dusty, welcome back, sir.
Welcome. Yeah, last week apparently we had too much for the internet to handle, so we have to do this kind of second part on growing your book of business in
Right.
commercial real estate. We're going to talk about exactly what you do as a commercial broker to start and grow your book of business into something that you'll have for the rest of your career.
Absolutely. And I think last week we just started scratching the surface with you, Dusty, on beginning, starting to grow or to develop your book of business and how to do that. And then obviously people can go back and watch last week's episode. But in a nutshell, where do we start? Where do we begin to get started to growing our book of business?
Yeah, let's do a quick recap of last week, just kind of
Okay.
in case someone missed it. Let's go ahead and add
Absolutely.
these slides in here.
Okay.
There we go. All right. So very basically, we're going to talk about, again, this is what I was like my very first day on the job was like, well, I want to do commercial real estate. What do I do every day? What does a commercial broker do every day? So we're just going to walk real quick through what you should be doing as a commercial broker. Here's a kind of long form of what that looks like.
Okay.
First thing you need to do is learn a product type, right? So multifamily, office, retail, industrial. I've sold vineyards before, land, development. These are all different things. If you're in residential, that's one thing, right?
Right.
Selling houses. There's a luxury house. That's one thing. There's a entry-level house. That's another thing. There's still houses.
Investment property.
Even investment rental properties, there's still houses, right? Or 4 units or less houses. Yeah. With commercial, there's a lot more moving parts, the different types of products that you have. So you need to pick what you're comfortable with. A lot of people are comfortable with multifamily because you've rented houses before. You've got rental properties. You're familiar with a lot of the things that you need for a rental property. So a lot of people start with multifamily, but as you branch out or you get more used to things, some people start with industrial, perhaps warehouse space, right? Maybe they owned a business that rented space and they're familiar with that. But figure out a product type, then figure out a database to farm, just like you would in residential. Find an area within your metro statistical area that you feel comfortable farming. So there's different areas that are industrial, that would be industrial areas that you can farm, or you could pick a multifamily farm. Pick something, and then that's what you're going to work and manage as a commercial broker. You're going to learn what the vacancy is and the rents and all that stuff, kind of what the concessions are, right? Concessions is a word I don't know that we've talked about, but
I don't think we talked about concessions, but
you'll see
we talked a little bit. We talked a little bit about getting a couple months in to develop the space, whatever the space may be. So we talked a little bit about it, getting a couple months free.
But you'll learn different product types. So retail would have one thing where they're comfortable with. Industrial would have another comfort zone with those types of things. So you'll learn that over time. But learn a product type, pick your farm, and then start moving that. Your farm will be cold. You'll never have spoken to them. You're going to take them from what we call the cold database, which you've never spoken to them. And you're going to move them into an area where you've spoken to someone who owns that property. You've got their information, and you can now regularly kind of touch bases with them. In your warm database. And like I say here, minimum you want 26 times a year. And then step number 6 is where you start to list those properties using these two-step listing process. And then after this, we're going to go ahead and talk about how you market to these guys.
Okay.
What does a commercial broker do every day? These are the 3 things we do. We either grow our database, we secure these new listings, or we manage our current listings, just like you do in residential, right? So if I'm not doing anything, I should be doing money-making activities that involve me growing that database, moving them from my cold area to the warm area, or following up with people that I've already spoken to. After about a year or two, if you're doing things on a consistent basis, you're not going to be doing a whole lot of cold calls anymore. It's going to be mostly just checking in with people that already have spoken to you. Here's the major food groups we already talked about, right? All of these break down into much more detail. Multifamily, for example, here, is not just one thing. You've got 2 to 4 units. Over 5 units is considered commercial, right? If it's over 16 units, 16 or more, you generally need an on-site manager designated for that. And it doesn't have to be something special, but you need an on-site manager. And then you've got different styles of apartments, right? Garden style, low, mid, high rise, 55 over housing, mobile home parks, etc. So when you pick a product type, go in and pick something specific. I tend to focus on 16, 20-ish units on the multifamily side because a lot of what I do is fast food acquisitions. So when they sell their apartments, I want it to be in a certain price range, and that generally means 15 or 20 units or less sometimes of multifamily. So pick a niche, stick with it.
Don't jump around.
Don't jump around. You will end up growing, right? So like I said, I've sold vineyards, I've sold warehouse space, industrial space, I've done retail, multifamily, the gambit. But in office, I probably know the least about, but I've still sold some office buildings too.
Okay.
And something you should know as a new commercial broker is leasing can be as much or more lucrative than just sales. If you think about a building, 5-unit building, whether it's office, retail, industrial, those are going to lease out a lot during the same period as it transitions hands. So if it sells every 5 years, that's one sale every 5 years, as opposed to how many leasing transactions that happen during that 5 years. It's going to be a lot more, and there's going to be more money involved, and it's going to be a lot quicker. Leasing, you don't have escrow. You really just turn in an invoice at the end of things. And no one has to come to the table with millions of dollars to buy something. They just have to come to the table with enough money to put their business in the location. So just keep that in mind. I think we already went over this. So what goes in your warm database? I talked about, like, you pick a farm, you haven't spoken to them. How do you move them into that warm database where you have spoken to them? Ideally, you've talked to them by voice. So we're doing a lot of calls in the commercial. We can't do door knocking in commercial because people live across they live all over the place. So when it comes to like industrial and retail, sometimes the owners will be working within that unit, right? So maybe they own a retail store that's in one of their units, and then the rest are their tenants. Same thing with industrial. But for the most part, you're going to be calling these people to get a hold of them. And that's what our door knocking is for a commercial side of things.
So basically cold calling, and you don't feel that these people will get tired of hearing from you throughout the year, right? It's different than residential, where these people are probably like ignoring your calls, sending you straight to voicemail, or telling you not to call ever again, right?
Yeah, they get these calls all the time. So a commercial owner, if you can get a hold of their phone number, they're going to get calls constantly. So even if they hang up on you and it's if it's the real deal, you're still going to put them in your warm database because you have a real number for that person.
Even if they hang up on you.
Even if they hang up, a lot of sometimes they'll be like, not interested. Click.
Right.
And then you call them up in 60 days and say, hey, John, we spoke 2 months ago about your property on Main Street. How's that treating you? And now it's a different conversation. He doesn't remember that he hung up on you.
Right.
Because he gets them all the time. So don't worry about that if it's a short conversation or not very productive, because they're not going to remember it. So it still goes in your warm database. I want to know the people that own the property. I want to have their phone number so that I can call them, and hopefully I've got their email so I can add them to my list. That's one of the things we ask them, like, hey, I'm growing my database. We haven't spoken before. You on Main Street. How's it treating you? Great. I know you don't want to sell, because they'll tell me that. And but I often find properties and opportunities coming up around there. Do you want me to add you to my list in case I find anything of value that you could acquire? And they say yes most of the time. Right.
So that's kind of like the call to action, kind of right there, right?
Yeah. We always want to provide value, but at the bare minimum, you could do a pitch like that, like, hey, I'm not going to BS you. Like, we haven't spoken. I'm growing my database. Right. What are you working on? What are you looking for? How's your property performing? When's the last time you had a look at your equity position and whether you should reposition that equity somehow? And that gets us into that listing presentation, right?
Right. And then essentially it could lead to, hey, I'm not looking to buy. I'm actually looking to get out of the business. Now, I'm your man, right?
That's right. So we'll talk about the listing presentation when that happens. So when they do raise their hand and say, yes, I'd like to know what my property is worth, or yeah, maybe I would like to look at maybe what some different options would be if I were to reposition my equity. We'll talk about that. But first off, you're going to want to stay top of mind. So you've now got someone who you've got their phone number. Hopefully you have their email. You're going to start to put them in your warm database. You're going to start to market to them. You're going to want to market to them 23 to 26 times or more per year, because that's going to keep you top of mind. And there's some examples: emails, calls, physical mail. You can meet with them live if they're a top prospect. If you've got some video training on different, whatever of value that you can present to them, you're going to put that in front of them so that you're providing value, you're building your brand, and you're staying top of mind. Here's kind of what that could look like. Like we talked about last time, very similar to residential side. We just have these different kind of nodes of connecting with someone. And we're going to ramp that up a little bit once we do finally speak to them. So this is what that might look like.
And this all goes into your CRM and all that stuff. I mean, this is set up automated pretty much.
Yeah. So I think last time we might have spoke about the Seinfeld sequence. So Seinfeld is a self-contained show. You don't have to know what happened last show or what's going to happen next show. There's no real cliffhanger. It's just a self-contained story that you can have one at a time. So that's every time I create a new email, I have that in mind. I don't want it to relate to other emails or like a sequence. It doesn't have to be complicated. I just want it to provide a little nugget of value that I can then add to my list of growing emails that are going out all the time. And in 2 years or a year, when that first email comes around again, maybe they didn't see it. It's not going to matter that that's cycling through with the same contact over and over again, because there's not going to remember last year that they got that email.
Exactly.
Right. But you're staying top of mind. So really on here, the only thing that you have to be really pay attention to is your personal calls. Like if you're personally calling them, which you should be on commercial, checking in. And the quarterly, maybe like a market update. You're going to have to prepare that too. But as far as the just listed physical emails and email, that's happening every time you have a listing. The Seinfeld sequence up top there, that's happening all the time too. Maybe you add to it every now and then. But this is even 42 points of contact per year is still pretty low on your time spent on this side of things. You could do stuff like this too. Where every time you add them from the cold list, add them to the warm list, you can add them to social media. That's happening more and more. Like we talked about last time, as the generation that really wasn't familiar with the internet is kind of starting to age out of things.
Right.
We're starting to see more people online on social media. So that can be very helpful too. Live meetings, you could host and do some lectures too. That helps as well. All of that helps build your brand, as long as it's providing value. So did we get to this part about the listing last time? I
don't believe so, but let's cover it. I would like to take a look at this again. I mean, we were getting on a roll last time, so
yeah,
let's check it out. So
when you're doing this, eventually someone's going to say, "Well, yeah, sure. I'll what's my property worth?" Yes, raise my hand. Maybe I should figure out what I should do with this property. Then we step into what's called the two-step listing appointment. Okay, so there's 2 meetings. Wherever this happens, you're going to schedule that first meeting. So maybe that you have a conversation. They say, yes, I would like to know, I'd like whatever you're going to provide me of value. You're always talking about something of value when you're talking to someone. And you say, cool, can we meet next Tuesday at whatever time? And then you meet with them at meeting 1. You deliver your thing of value. That could be a rent survey. Maybe you called them because there's something down the road that wants to sell, right? Maybe you called someone and they want to sell, but they don't want to list with you. Well, cool. Now I have a good reason to call everyone in the surrounding area and sit down with them. Because I'm going to sit down with them and tell them about this property that wants to sell. And by the way, I can analyze your property too. Would you like me to do that? Okay, so at meeting 1, we deliver value. We get the books and records, right? Because we don't want the profit and loss.
Right.
And at that meeting, we're setting meeting 2. All right, cool. I'll be back in 2 days with this put together for you, and we'll sit down then. Sit down at meeting 2. We present the BOV, broker opinion of value, and we're going to propose the listing at that point. Say, hey, here's what your property's worth. Here's why. Here's what you could buy with it, is often what I do, because in my area, the prices are so overblown that someone could trade out a multifamily and buy a Taco Bell and actually get a pay raise.
Right.
And that makes it a really no-brainer for them to list with me. But that's what you do.
That's what we were talking about is trading up, or, getting away from that day-to-day multifamily and going into these Taco Bell, Burger Kings and all that good stuff, where it's kind of like hands off a little bit more, right?
Yeah, you've got a value proposition. My value proposition is I can take you. I'm in Northern California. I'm around San Francisco. Like, you've got people selling a 2-bed, 1-bath tear down for $1 million. I can trade that, and what income you're making off that, or nothing, and we can go buy a Taco Bell of that same value. And instead of no money or a headache, now you've got $60,000 a year net income coming in for the next 20 years. Right? It's a no-brainer. So figure out your value proposition too is another topic that we might want to cover. Figuring out how people can put that together. But that's all you're doing. Step 1, I'm going to sit down with you, provide my value. Hey, give me your books and records. I'll come back in a couple days. We'll sit down. Here's what your property's worth. Do you want to list it? And whether they say yes or no, you win. Right?
Right.
I think I put that here. Yeah. So whether they say yes or no, you win, because now you have all that data on that property. They're considering selling. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. They're not going to list with you. But you have all the rental information of the area, all the data about the units, upgrades, all the stuff that someone else is going to want to know in the area. You have all that for that property.
And not only that, I think you built the rapport. You started that process of meeting face to face. And I think a lot of agents, that's the biggest challenge, is getting over that first meeting, that first hump. And that's what they're nervous about, going to that first meeting. So
I think I put it later in this presentation, but our numbers are, I think, about 7 or 8 out of 10 broker BOVs that we do when we sit down with them. Eventually they list or sell with us.
Got it.
Right. And it's about follow-up too, right? So maybe 2 out of 10 say yes right away. 1 out of 10 right away say yes. But as we're following up over about 8 months, 8 out of 10 of those will have sold.
8 out of 10 of those would have sold. Wow.
Yep.
Those are good numbers. I mean,
yeah,
right away, 1 out of 10. And
my area is unique because of that whole situation. You could say you're making $20,000, you're dealing with tenants and toilets and headaches, and you're going down there collecting rent.
Yeah.
I could sell that, and I could actually end up with double the money and nothing to do except collect checks.
And less work. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to tell a lot of my investors that own multiple single family homes or own a commercial apartment building. Hey, you can do this a lot faster at scale, or less headache in triple net leases, Burger Kings, Taco Bell. So yeah. No,
the issue there is the inventory, right? So you need to know the people with the inventory. I'm in with, I've been doing this for years, so I know everyone I need to call who controls the fast food inventory, and I can get it before it hits the market. If you don't do that and you're not really plugged in there, then there's an issue, because you could try and sell a 5-unit building and there's nothing for you to go into, right? The inventory is moving too fast. It's overpriced. So you just got to be careful if you structured something like that.
Yeah, so
it takes time.
And Dusty, in this situation, when you're building your book of business, you're not only building your book of business for buyers or sellers, you're also building for agents, listing agents, and potential.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, in commercial, it's a very small world. So I do things nationally with the fast food stuff. There's about a dozen people that I will call every time I have a buyer who control most of the inventory in different regions, right? So I'm going to call them and say, here's what I have, and they'll give me stuff that's upcoming that hasn't hit the market yet. And then I can trade oftentimes before the market ever sees it. And you'll develop those relationships over time. It just takes some time to develop those.
Okay.
But first thing you're going to do is work your market and get to know your market, because the value of your database is where your value comes from, right? I pay CoStar almost $500 a month for their data, which is not that great, right? The most that they do is they call a property every time it sells and try and just ask a couple questions about the, what did it sell for? What was the cap rate? Very basic stuff. And they don't really get into detail, but I'm still paying them $500 a month so that I can get that data. So if you know your market that well or better, then your value is huge to any owner. All right. Here's some numbers on the BOB. You should be getting at least 1 out of 10. So if you sit down with someone 10 times, you should get at least 1 listing out of that. Okay. And like I said, even if they don't list with you, you still know roughly where their head's at and what they'll sell for. So now you can kind of what we call shop the comp. Like, you don't have to tell people what it is or where it's at, but you can say, hey, I know someone within a quarter mile of Main Street that you own that might want to sell. Do you want to sit down and take a look at it? Now I've got my first meeting.
Right.
What
about, how do you deal with the people that's like, well, send it to me via email. I don't want to meet in person. Send it to me via email. How do you deal with those?
Well, I like to sit down in person with people. There's some secondary, tertiary follow-up questions, some different routes we might go down. So I like to sit down with someone and make sure it's a good match for you and answer any questions you have live. So we could do a Zoom call if you like, right? So we could do it on Zoom, but I'm not just going to send something to you. I'd like to answer your questions when we review it.
Right.
So in this day and age too, like Zoom's not uncommon as well, but you kind of prefer to sit down with them.
Okay.
As a broker in commercial real estate, generally you're looking at and monitoring what I call monitoring between 1 and 3,000 properties. Okay, so you've got your farm, and you're going to grow that to 1 to 3,000 properties. And every time those properties trade or sell, you're going to call the buyer, you're going to call the seller, you're going to call the agents. Hopefully, if you've got the time, this is what you should be doing, and do what CoStar does: get the information. Okay. At the very least, you can get the information of what it sold for, what the cap rate was, all the stuff that CoStar has that I'm paying all that money for. At the very least, you can get that, right? And you can be at least worth $500 a month to each person that you're talking to. So that's what you should be doing. And that's, if you build your database to 1 to 3,000 properties, some people are as high as 5,000 or more. You're never going to be doing cold calls again. You're going to be following up with them constantly. Because like I said, you've got that 26 touch or more per year that you're connecting with them, but you're also calling them. So you're following up with them. You've got your notes. Hey, did you replace that roof? How'd that go? Hey, I know you were trying to refinance. How'd that work out? Did you buy that RV park that you were thinking of with that refinance?
And these refreshers, these notes are always in your CRM. So when you follow back up with that call, right?
Yeah. So I use Build Out. That's a good point. I use Build Out.
Okay.
And you could use RealNex too, works. But Build Out and RealNex, they'll put together not just the CRM for the individuals that you're talking to, but also you can build out the property too. And you can put the marketing materials together, BOBs, all that stuff with the click of a button, you can put that together and just go sit down with the person. So I would use one of those two things. You need a database if you're going to be doing this. You could do it with like an Excel spreadsheet, but it's a lot easier if you have a database like that that's built for that.
Right.
Here, I say, like I said before, anytime something sells, you should be calling everyone that you can involved with that transaction. This month, I had 9 transactions to call on. It's not that much, right?
Okay.
But that's going to update your database, and you can be more persistent than CoStar is, right? I could make sure I get the brochure from the listing broker on that property, even though it didn't come to market. I see it sold, it traded. I know the agent that represented them. I can actually call that guy. I can get his OM on that property, and I can add that to my database. I can continue to add value, even though I didn't represent anyone on that database.
And that transaction. It's set in stone that they have to create an OM just to send around to their private database, right? So even if they don't put it on the market or put it on LoopNet or CoStar, they're still creating this OM to shop it around to their internal database, right?
Yeah, it'll always have some sort of brochure with all the data you need.
Absolutely.
To really add value to your own personal database. All right, what else do we have here? Okay, so then, so that's really the basics of that. And then, so what do I do to get people to raise their hand and ask me to, what their property's worth? Okay, there's different, and I liken it to fishing here. There's different types of fishing, different type of prospecting that you can do, whether they're on your cold database or your warm database. You can be doing different things to attract people to you. And these goes over the basics of that might look like, probably similar to residential. You could personally go fishing, right? Do cold calls, one-on-one cold calls, one-on-one lunch and coffee meetings. You can go networking yourself. Like you personally are spending the time each and every time to go and fish for prospects, right? So you could do that. And we do a lot of cold calls. So we do that quite often. That's part of our basics. Okay. You could also do cast the net, right? It's not going to be as focused on certain prospects, but you can cast that out, pull it in, see what you get.
That happens with residential as well.
Yeah. So we got like examples here: postcards, letter campaigns, paid ads online. You got email blasts, could be considered that. But again, you got your cold database, your warm database. Warm database is going to be a lot more targeted than just simple email blasts going out. You could build a trap. These are lead magnets, right? So you could build something, spend the time to build a trap up, right? And then let them come to you, right? Let them raise their hand. Let them find your cool thing, cool bait to get into your ecosystem, right? And once they're in there, now you can market to them in a different way. But traps take a lot of time up front, right? So building a lead magnet, building the landing page and all the follow-up campaign that goes with that landing page and that lead magnet, that takes some time. But once it's set up, it's set up. Yeah, once they're in your database, however you do it, in your warm database, it's all about providing value, doing those touches, 26 or more follow-ups per year. Yep. Organic traffic. I don't know if we really want to go into this, but there's ways to do organic traffic on social media.
Okay.
But you shouldn't be paying for ads online if you're not making 30,000 or more a month, roughly on average. Real estate can be hills and valleys, but if you're not making about 30,000 a month in income, don't pay for ads. I put down that number 2, traffic. TNF is traffic and funnels. They have a playbook on kind of how to develop organic traffic without paying for ads, right? And so you could develop this organic traffic online through social media, blogs, and all this stuff. And then once you're making a decent amount of income, you can kind of scale that. But you don't really want to do that until you're successful. That's traffic and funnels is what they're called.
Funnels. Okay, perfect. And by the way, Dusty, we got people watching. If you find this as good value, please give us a like, thumbs up, wherever you're watching at. We appreciate it. We need it on social media, so we appreciate that. But go ahead, Dusty.
Just to end it, I'd like to talk about 12-week challenge. I didn't get to it this week. I was going to try and start it this week, but I had a couple escrows jump up at me and kind of got busy. And next week's 4th of July. So we're going to start the week after 4th of July. But if you want to build your book of business, this is a good, easy metric to use. Take every week for 12 weeks, add 5 new properties into your warm database. Okay. This could be just doing calls. Call until you find 5 people. Like I said, might be a short conversation where they almost hang up on you. But find 5 people who own the property in your farm. So you need a farm. Find that has the real number of those people. Hopefully you have their email. But add 5 of those every single day for 12 weeks. Every weekday, every business day, right?
So even if the property has just sold, that's could be one of your 5.
If you can find the owner, the new owner, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
How difficult is it to find a new owner?
Depending on your jurisdiction, every maybe like 2 weeks out, you'll start to see it notified.
Okay.
I've done some deals in, I think, Michigan. It took 2 months for their public data to update.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's what a lot like CoStar and these like Reonomy and Prospect Now will pull data. They'll farm data from the public and public realm, and they'll cross-reference it and find those phone numbers of the owners. And but they can't do that until they figure out who the new owner is, which is when the public records are updated. And it just depends on how busy they are.
Got it. Okay.
But it should be a couple weeks, maybe 2 weeks out from whenever it actually sells, that it'll pop up in your system. I use CoStar. You can use Reonomy is another good one. It's a lot cheaper. My brokerage gives it to us for free. It's included in our dues. But before I was with my brokerage, I think I was paying $297 a month for Reonomy. CoStar will run you about $500 a month right now. Prospect Now is the cheapest. It's also the least effective. You'll have a lot more wrong numbers, but that I think I was paying about $100 a month with Prospect Now when I had that previously. So you can use all those to find the phone numbers of the owners, and those are all specific to commercial. It's not residential systems. And you could use those as a CRM too. They provide areas for notes and everything on all those, so you don't actually have to do build out or RealNex. You could just start with those. So if you did that for 12 weeks, after 12 weeks, you'll have 300 properties in your warm database. And if you did that for a full year, now you have your over 1,000 properties in your warm database, right? Remember what I said, 1 to 3,000, and you could just work that database. So after a year of this, you could just work that database, and that's it. Now you're not doing cold calls anymore. You're just calling them back every 60 days or so. I think we said last time, 45 days or to 60 days is about ideal. If you're calling someone every month, then it starts getting annoying.
Right.
But if 45 days or longer is better. You probably don't want to go past 60 days if you can. And
why is that?
But you start to drop off that top of mind, right? So you're not being annoying, but you're not really. They don't really remember you. But I had someone that I was working with who was with Marcus, and he said after one of the deals he did was a $15 million multifamily, and it was like 11 months after he had first called the guy, and the guy basically hung up on him every single time. Basically hung up on him. No, I'm not interested. Like, don't call me again, kind of stuff. And about 11 months later, he said, "You know what? You're persistent. You keep calling me. I know I think it was 60 days or so, I'm going to get a phone call from you, and I know your number is going to pop up, and I'm going to hear your voice. I'll give you a shot." And he actually got to list and sell this thing. It was a $15 million deal 11 months later.
Never give up.
Yeah. So just be persistent. It's just a numbers game.
No means not right now.
That's right.
Well, at least in this space.
Well, what's the rule? I think it takes 5 no's to get a yes from the same. If one person tells you no, maybe it'll take 5 times before they tell you yes. So you need to be in front of them, and that could be just opening your email and not responding. Right? You need to be in front of them 5 times before they say, "All right, you know what? Let's do this." So just be persistent. I think that's all I had on this. If you're new to commercial, do this challenge for 12 weeks, starting next week. Week after next is when I'm starting. 5 new properties every single business day to your warm list. I'm starting with a brand new list. It's 492 properties in it. It's retail properties in my area I have never spoken to.
Okay.
And we're going to see what happens. I'm going to document the whole thing for 12 weeks.
Awesome. And how are those first initial calls going to look? How's that call going to look in your first initial? Like, what is kind of the value add that you're going to lead with in that initial?
I'm going to see how no value proposition happens, how that works. And that's just the pitch I gave you. Like, hey, I'm Dusty Bates. I'm with EXP Commercial. We haven't spoken before. I'm growing my database. I do a lot of retail in the area. You own Main Street over here. I see you bought it about 2 years ago. I thought I'd introduce myself. How's Main Street performing right now?
Got it.
Right. Yeah, and then it goes in different directions, right? You don't want to try and force it. You don't want to say, "Hey, I got a hot deal," when you don't have a hot deal. Like they know exactly what's going on there, and then they will remember you next time, and they'll say, "No, you were that guy who said some BS to me and tried to trick me." last time. I don't want to talk to you.
Okay. So be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Honest.
Yeah. And most of the time they'll be nice. I don't know how many cold calls you've done, Lawrence, in your career, but
I've done quite a bit and got hung up on, called every type of name out there.
Really?
Yeah. Text, email, everything. So
a lot of times from my experience, I did cold calls with residential before I did started as an agent in commercial. This is back in 2008 or so.
Okay.
Back when I was in like college. I've never really had like really angry people. Huh. They try and be polite, right? They may be curt about things, but I've never, I've had some people that are rude,
right?
But I'm just at the end of the day, I just want to find the person who owns that property, and make sure I have the real number for them, and that's very valuable.
Yeah, I think it may be a different space with the residential side than commercial. Like I said, you're not just calling to say, "Hey, let me list your property." You're giving more of a touch to it, where, "Hey, I have this property. It may be looking to sell. Are you interested?" Or, "Hey, I got to, I'm not. I know you're not trying to sell, but here's values or what just sold around the area, yada yada." So
there's a lot of they're business people oftentimes, and it's I'm the conversation often goes to, well, I often come up with properties that are not on the market. People, decide they want to sell soon. Right. Do you want to be on my list? I'll just put you on my list in case anything pops up. They say, yeah, sure. And you get some criteria on what they're looking for. Like, okay, this one's about this size. Do you want anything this size, maybe bigger? Is it just the retail properties? Do you have any multifamily too?
Yeah. So that call,
down the road on this street. Okay. Well, what's the unit mix on that one?
Right. So
okay. Well, what's the rents? Okay, cool. But your one bedrooms, what are those getting? Do you have any upgrades in those?
Yeah.
And then now we're doing a rent survey, which is what you don't tell someone you're doing a rent survey. You just do the rent survey.
Right.
And then once I get all the information on his multifamily down the road here, in this example, then I say, hey, I tell you, maybe I call him a couple days later, say, hey, you were telling me about this property over here. I've got someone who actually is looking for something like that. Do you have a couple of minutes on Tuesday to sit down? I can kind of walk you through what they're looking for. And now I've got my meeting number one, not on the retail building I was calling on, but on a multifamily, so just let it be organic and try and provide value. And be honest.
I mean, that's good info right there too. I don't know if a lot of newer agents, commercial agents, or experienced agents, they probably use this, but that's a good lead into having that conversation and keeping them engaged with Dusty Bates or whoever it may be.
Yeah,
I like that.
Well, that's what other questions do you have right now, Lawrence, about this process?
Mainly my whole thing is for those agents that just getting started, hate cold calling, right? How successful are you in this business or in this space if you hate cold calling?
Well, that goes back to some other things, like your calls don't cost any money. You need somewhere to pull the numbers from.
Right.
But there's these different ways, right? Remember these different ways?
Yep.
Yeah, cold calls that's the main one, right? So you're going to do door knocking in residential. That's what our cold calls are, is door knocking. Door knocking works.
Right.
You're going to leave the hanger there. You're going to knock on the door, try and talk to them. Here's my card. It works. It's a pain in the ass, and it's a lot of work, but it works. And that's what our cold calls are. So you could do that. You could also do some other stuff that will cost some money, right? Postcard campaigns, letter campaigns, that's going to cost money.
Right.
And time. Okay. But you could do it. Same thing with, lead magnets. You could build a lead magnet. It's going to take you time and effort and probably some money. And then you're going to have to run some ads. Remember me warning about, if you're not making $30,000 a month on what you're doing right now, don't try and scale it with ads. Get it to work as is. But yeah, so if you don't like to do cold calls, you can do other stuff. It's just going to cost you money and time in different ways.
Yeah. I mean, this is great info. So if you're looking to build your book of business and you don't know where to start, you can rewatch this. You can contact us right down below. schedule a one-on-one call. We can help you get started in this business. Dusty is a coach. He's a trainer for the schools. So reach out, Dusty. I appreciate this information. This is the foundation of where we need to start when you're coming into this space, in the commercial space. So I appreciate this. This is huge value for everybody.
Thank you. Yeah. If you guys want to do a strategy session, I think it's down there.
Yep.
Talk CRE. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And now what do we want to cover next week? So this is pretty much the foundation. I think anyone watching this or made it to this end, I think they need to rewatch this from start to finish, because I'm definitely going to do it, to know where to start and how to advance and keep going, right? So what do we want to cover next week, Dusty?
It's a good question.
I know
there's all kinds of stuff we could cover. So let's say someone started their career here.
Correct.
They're starting now. They're brand new. They've learned. It's important you learn a product type. Don't just call a multifamily owner and pretend you know what you're doing. Get to know, and you can go on LoopNet and CoStar and these places and find the stuff that's listed right now. Pull down the brochures and start to review them and analyze them yourself. See if it would be a good investment for you,
right?
As though you're the investor. And if it is, guess what? Now you have a reason to call some people who own property because you found something online, right? So that's a good place to start. We could talk. Did we talk about letters of intent?
No, we haven't talked about letters of intent at all. I would like to cover that too as well. But what we'll do is we'll talk offline here, see what we can come up with on the next topic for us, because I think this is going to lead us into, okay, I made cold calls, I've been following up, I have that set up. Now what's next? Right.
Why don't we talk about building your book? This is building your book. How about closing your first commercial deal?
That's a good one too.
And we'll talk as though you've just listed a property, you've got something in hand. How do you take it from someone raised their hand here, like, yeah, tell me what it's worth, to a closed deal?
Right.
And we can talk about that and how to use that. I'll use the target method on marketing and stuff like that, and we'll talk about how to do all that. I think that's a good next step here.
Awesome. And then if anyone wants to learn about anything else on this show, feel free to leave a comment for us. We read all the comments. We check them out. Any suggestions, feel free. We're open book. We're here for live Q&A. You guys can always get on and ask questions. All right.
Excellent. All right. We will see you next week.
All right. Talk soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.